morning, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of Monday Morning Messages. I'm your host, Christine with a C. 2 weeks ago, we started going through Psalm 95 by looking at the first 2 verses. And last week's message covered verses 3 through 5. Today, we are on verses 6 and 7. So we're going to read verses 6 and 7 of Psalm 95, and then we'll jump right in. Let's get to the text. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God. We are the people he watches over, the flock under his care. Now last Monday we looked at verses 3 through 5 of Psalm 95 and discussed how there is only one true God. He's the creator and sustainer of everything. And if you missed that episode of Monday Morning Messages, you may want to go back and check it out and then come back to this one. Today, we're looking at verses 6 and 7. So far in this psalm, we've been invited to sing and shout joyfully to God, to come to him with thanksgiving. And in verse 6, we are once again invited to come. This time, we've added to bow down and kneel before him. Why? Because he is our Maker and our God. Not only did God create us, as he did everything in the natural world, but he made us in his own image. And you'll find that in Genesis 1, 26 and 27. What does it mean for us to be his image bearers? It means that he made us to be like him. Not divine, but loving, compassionate, and creative. We reflect his image when we treat others like he does, with loving kindness and respect. And when we utilize the resources he has placed on this earth to better the human experience for those around us. God deserves to be worshiped for creating us in his image and making us stewards of this amazing world he created. So why doesn't everyone worship God? Well, sadly, for many people, acknowledging that God created us would include admitting that if he made us, he owns us, and if he owns us, he makes the rules. Some people would rather live for their own desires than submit to God's rules. So they try to find a way to explain everything, how we got here, how everything in the world got here, without God. However, when we choose to acknowledge God as our Creator and King, we find so much more contentment, joy, and peace in our lives. Our lives take on greater purpose and meaning than we could ever create within ourselves. How is that possible? Well, let's go on to verse 7. It says, "We are the people he watches over, the flock under his care. If only he would listen to his voice today." Now, herding sheep and other animals, being shepherds, it's not a common occupation for people in our Western culture today. However, it was very common in ancient Israel, and perhaps that's why the Bible uses this analogy for God in multiple instances. The most well-known passage for this is the 23rd Psalm. And Psalm 23 verse 1 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need." Isaiah 40:11 says, "He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will carry the lambs in his arms, holding them close to his heart. He will gently lead the mother sheep with her young." And in Ezekiel 34:31, God says, "You are my flock, the sheep of my pasture. You are my people, and I am your God." There are other examples we could look at throughout the Old Testament, but I think you get the point. Even Jesus picked up on this theme in the New Testament. He said in John 10:14, "I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me." Jesus said in John 14:15, "If you love me, you will obey my commandments." But when you surrender your life to God, he doesn't just give you a list of rules to follow. He cares for you, provides everything you need, and protects you from the enemy, just like a good shepherd caring for his sheep. The final line of Psalm 95:7 pleads with the reader, "If only you would listen to his voice today." John 10:3-4 says of the good shepherd, "The sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. He walks ahead of them and they follow him because they know his voice." Isn't it wonderful to know that Jesus knows your name? That's wonderful news. Here are two questions that you and I must ask ourselves. 1, do I know Jesus' voice? And 2, am I willing to listen and follow him? He helps us answer yes to both of those questions when we put our trust in him. What happens if we refuse to listen and follow him? We'll answer that question next time. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this today. And if you like what you heard, please consider subscribing to my channel. Leave the thumbs up. Feel free to comment with your thoughts on these verses. Send it to a friend who you think may enjoy it. And please come back next week for another Monday morning message as we look at Psalm 95, verses 8 and 9. And remember, faith in God gives us peace in our hearts. Shalom.